Okay. Okay, hello everyone. We're gonna start. This is day 3 and the last day of the Java Winter Coding Camp. And today we're gonna be going over the homework first, and then we're gonna do a Kahoot review over the basics of arrays, and then we're gonna review over arrays from yesterday and add like a very small thing to it. And then we're gonna go over for loops again, and then we're gonna go over user input, and then what to do after this course. So if you forgot the homework, here's the problem again. So a meteorologist is given many temperatures for the next coming days, and he wants to find out how many of these days are cold. So his definition of cold is if the temperature is less than 50, he'll consider the day to be cold. And we were supposed to create a program that'll take in the meteorologist's list of temperatures and output to him how many of the days were cold. So when we go over when you get a problem like in general for like programming, it's always best to just kind of write out an example and go through it, and then I'll kind of demonstrate what that would look like right here. So in this example I drew out down below, I have 10 different temperatures. So I have 40, 32, 98, and so on. And we want to find out how many days are cold. So remember, our definition of cold is when the temperature is less than 50. So 40 would be cold, 32 would be cold, 98 is not cold, 32 is cold, 16 is cold, 5, 41, 26, 14, they're all cold. 89 wouldn't be cold. The number 50, that would not be cold actually, because 50 is not less than 50. Does that make sense? That 50 is not less than 50. Like the only time that this would be true is if it would be like 50 less than or equal to 50. So I hope that makes sense for the definition of cold.
Yeah, and just to clarify for the homework, you're supposed to print how many days would be cold, not the temperatures on cold days. You're supposed to count how many days would be cold and display that at the end.
Yeah. So what we could do is we could go through every single index. So what we check, like first we would check if the temperature array at index 0 is cold, then index 1, then index 2, then index 3, then index 4. We're going to keep doing that so forth, okay? And we can determine if the day is cold or not. And what we could do is like, let's go through this example ourselves. So temperature 40 is cold. So far we have one cold day, okay? At index 1, it is a cold day because 32 is less than 50. So that's 2 cold days so far. 98 is not less than 50. So we're still at 2 cold days. 32 degrees is a cold because 32 is less than 50. So that's 3 cold days so far. 16 would be cold because 16 less than 50. 5 is less than 50, so that's a 5th cold day. 41 is less than 50, so that's a 6th cold day. 26 is a cold day, and 14 is a cold day, so that's like 8 cold days total. So as you noticed, when I was going through the problem, I had initially 0 cold days, right? And every time there was a cold day, I increased the amount of cold days that I had by 1. So as you can see, I was counting up by 1 every time I found a cold day. And when I was going through the array, I was going through it index by index. So what we could do is we could check every index and check if that day is cold. And if the day is cold, we can increase the amount of cold days we have by 1. So you would do this for index 0 all the way through index 9 because the length of the array is 10 and Java starts counting at 0. So there would be 9 total indexes. So does this make sense before I continue on? Okay, no one's asking anything in chat, so I'm just going to keep going. So this seems a bit repetitive, doesn't it? Like there's a lot of lines of code I'm doing right here. I'm checking every single index from 0 to 9. This would be about 40 to 50 lines of code, and no one wants to type up 40 to 50 lines of code. So does anyone in chat have an idea of what we could do to not repetitively do this over and over again? Yeah, that's correct, Rithvik. Yeah, you would use a for loop because of the goal of a for loop is to it's like is for is to stop repetition. And with the for loop, you don't need to write your code many times over and over again. So we can use a for loop to just repeat the same exact step over and over again. And the only difference between each if statement is the index. It starts everything else is the exact same thing. It's always going to be less than 50. We're always going to increase the amount of cold days we have by 1. The curly brackets are the same. The if statement's the same. It's just the index that's a bit different. So with the for loop, we don't need to type in that much code, and we can do this problem a lot quicker. So the way we would use a for loop here is, so since their indexes begin at 0 initially, what we want to do is we want to go from index 0 all the way over to index 9. So the way that we would try to do that is we would want to go all the way from I equals 0. And the reason I would do I equals 0 is because 0 is the 0th index. That's what I'm trying to, that's the reason I would use I equals 0. Now, in order to go all the way through index 9, the reason we want to do I less than 10 is because we would go through 9. And to show what that would look like, I think I need to show an example right here of why you would want to use I less than 9 rather than I less than 10. So when when your I index is 0, it is less than 10. So this is true. 1 is less than 10. Oh, sorry. 1 is less than 10. This is true. 2 is less than 10. This is true. And what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to get in the habit of just writing this out, because if you, even though it might take a lot of time to write out the entire thing, it'll help you understand the problem and you'll be more likely to get the right answer. So I want you to check for every index when, like, if it's going to be less than 10, and you'll see your for loop will run for all of these numbers for I. So 5 less than 10 would be true. 6 less than 10 would be true. So when your I is 6, if it's less than 10, it's true. So when the condition is true, like this part, I less than 10, when that's true, then the for loop will run. Otherwise, it will not run the for loop. Okay, so 7 is less than 10, that is true. 8 less than 10, that is true. And here's the big number. So remember, our highest index is 9 right here. So 9, we want to go through 9. If we just did 9 less than 9, this would not be true, because as you remember, 9 is equal to 9, right? But it's not less than 9. Hopefully that makes sense. The only way this condition would be true is if you added like an equal sign right here. Then it would be true. Otherwise, it's not true. And if this is not true, then we will never get to the 9th index. So what we want to do is we want to go to the 10th. We want to go to the last index. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do 9 less than 10. And this would be the right answer. And that's the reason you would want to use 10, like I less than 10 as your condition, rather than doing 9 less than 9. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to explain it a bit more in a little bit. So the way that we would use the for loop is we would have our I starting at 0, and then we would go all the way up to our last index of the array. And that is the reason I chose 10, remember, because we have 9, and we like our indexes go from 0 to 9. And if we do this condition, I equals 0 to I equals 10, we're going to go through every single index number. Like we're going to go through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 0 through 9 is all of our indexes. So it's perfect because we're going to be able to go through each of our indexes. So if you remember what our code looked like before, it was we were checking every single index, right? So what if we replaced the number 0 with I? What would happen then is we would go through every single index. And I'm going to show what that would look like if you're still a bit confused. So what this is called, what I'm going to do is called code trace, tracing your code a bit, or tracing a for loop. And tracing a for loop is effective so that you can better understand what's going on here. So we begin at, let's create a table. We begin at I equals 0, and our condition is I less than 10. Okay, and then that's what we're gonna do. So when I is 0, I is less than 10. This is true because 0 is less than 10. And then we're gonna do the if statement. If temperature of 0 is less than 50, then we would increase the amount of cold days we have by 1 because I is 0. So the next thing we're gonna do is like 1. Is 1 less than 10? That is true. Now I'm gonna go over to the first index and check if it's less than 0. So here, I can just start doing it. So is 40 less than 50, like less than 50? That's yes. So we have 1 cold day. Is 32 less than 50? Yes, we have 2 cold days. Now let's go to our second index. Is I less than 10 now? That is true. Is 98 less than 50? That is false. So we're still gonna have 2 cold days. And let's go to our third value of I. Is 3 less than 10? That is true. Is 30 now that it's true, we're now going to check the index. Is 32 less than 50? That is true. So now we're going to have 3 cold days. And at the end of every for loop, you always have to increase the value of I by 1. So now we're going to have an I value of 4. Is 4 less than 10? That is true. Now we're going to check the fourth index. Is 16 less than 50? That is true. So now we're going to increase the amount of cold days that we have by 1. So as you can see, I'm kind of just building off. I'm building up. Like I began with like baby steps of the problem, and I'm kind of like working my way through the solution. As you can kind of see, like I had a bunch of building blocks, like, and I kind of connected them together to make this kind of for loop. Like at first, we decided to go through every index and code every single index, like I show right here. And then as you can see, it's repetitive. So then I go to the for loop. And through using the for loop, we can kind of see that it will help us get our solution right here. So I hope that makes sense for this problem. This would be like kind of like the general thing you would want to do. Should I explain the entire for loop? What do you think, Kanishki-san? Okay, so someone in chat wants me to explain the whole for loop. Okay, I can do that. So now that we've gone through our fourth index and we see that 16 is less than 50, we're going to go to our fifth index. So now that I is 5, we need to check our condition. Is 5 less than 10? This is true. So we're going to do these statements inside the for loop. So now for index, we're going to go to our fifth index and check if it's less than 50. If since 5 is less than 50, we're going to have 5 total cold days now. As you can see, we're increasing the amount of cold days we have by 1 if it's true, like the inside condition, if the temperature is less than 50. But if the temperature is not less than 50, we don't increase the amount of cold days we have because that's not a cold day. So I'm going to keep doing this a bit faster for the rest of the for loop because it's a bit repetitive. So I equals 6, 6 is less than 10. Now I'm going to check if the index 6 is, if the temperature at index 6 is less than 50. That is true. So we have 6 cold days. Now we increase the value of our I by 1. So what I meant to write here is I equals I plus 1. Ignore what that says. Now we go to index 7. Is 7 less than 10? That is true. Now we're going to go to index 7 and check if the temperature at index 7 is less than 50. So 26 is less than 50. So now we're going to have 7 cold days. Okay, and then we increase the value of our I by 1. So now we go to our 8th, I equals 8. We're going to check if 8 is less than 10, and that is true. Now we're going to go over to our 8th index and check if the 8th index is always, if we're going to check if the value at the 8th index is less than 50. 14 is less than 50, so we're going to increase the amount of cold days we have by 1. Now we're going to go over to 9, okay? Like we're almost done, okay? So 9 is less than 10, so we're going to do the statements within the for loop. And then I'm going to check if the value at index 9 is less than 50. And 89 is actually greater than 50, so we're going to keep 8 total cold days, okay? And then now we're going to increase the value for I by 1. We're at 10. Is 10 less than 10? It is not. That is false. So because it's false, we're going to exit the for loop. So that's kind of how for loops would work. And as soon as it's false, you would stop doing all the statements within the for loop and just go to the next line of code. And since there's 8 total cold days, like once we get the amount of cold days that we have, we would just print it out because we were supposed to output the amount of cold days to the user. So that was a bit like a long explanation. So remember how we got 10 to be the length of the array? Like what if we were given an array of length 15, like all of a sudden? Our code wouldn't work anymore because we would only count the first 10 days and check if each day is cold. But what we could do instead of having 10, like I less than 10 as our condition, we could have a different condition. So if you remember, 10 is actually the length of the array. And don't worry about what this does. I will explain this more in depth later. But instead of writing out 10, we could just write down the length of the array. I hope that kind of makes sense. So I'm just going to go over a small example where we have like a length of an array of 2. So what if our array length is 2? We only want to go through index 0 and 1. So if we do I less than 2 and note that 2 is the length of the array, then we would be able to go through each index. And that's what we want. And that will make us happy. Okay. So we want to just go through the length of the array. And I'll be covering this more in depth later with Kanishk. So the second problem for homework, it was a bit confusing. And I apologize for giving a bit of a hard homework right here. So, but I'll explain it in depth here. So Leslie is interested in how many vowels she types up in her words. And we needed to create a program that will take in the input and output to her how many vowels there were. So let's take away all the useless stuff in the problem, and we need to let's just like shorten it down. And all we need to figure out is how many letters are vowels. And now let's think about the way we're gonna figure out how many letters are vowels. So let's go through a few examples, and it'll help us better understand coding the solution. So we know the vowels are A, E, I, O, U. And what we can do is we can check if index 0 is a vowel. So let's go through every single letter, and we're going to check if it's a vowel. Is index 0 a vowel? No. Is index 1 a vowel? Yes. So we have 1 vowel so far. Index 2 is not a vowel. Index 3, L is not a vowel. Index 4, O is a vowel because O is part of A, E, I, O, U. So yes, so we have 2 total vowels, and the word is ended. So I'm going to print 2 to the user. And if you were to go through another example, you would kind of notice that you're going through every single letter of the word, and you're checking if that letter is a vowel. Like, is that letter A, E, I, O, U? If it's neither of those 5 letters, then you would just say it's not a vowel, because we know that A, E, I, O, U are the only vowels. And there's no other way to, that's the only way to determine it's a vowel. And you would notice a pattern that you're just going through every character and checking if it's a vowel. And if it was a vowel, you would like note that in your head, like the amount of vowels that you've seen so far. And then at the very end, you would say how many vowels you found. Okay. So now that we kind of figured out what the general pattern is, let's try to translate this into code. And this, if you remember yesterday, we went over some string methods, but I'm going to take out all the complex string methods. We're just going to look at the very basic string methods. Okay. So which method out of these few do you think would be best for going through every single character? If someone can respond in chat. Huh?
Length.
No. Yeah, car at would be correct, because as you can see, car at will give you the character at each position.
Length is also useful though.
Huh?
Length is also.
But you technically use length too.
Yeah, you would use length, but that's like I'm talking about later. We'd use it later, but right now we want to use car at, because we want to go through every single character of the string, and we want to check if each character is considered a vowel. Is it A, E, I, O, U? So what we could do is we could go at the 0th index. We could do whatever the string is, character at 0. And then we would check, is H a vowel? H is not a vowel because it's not A, E, I, or U. So then we're going to go to the next letter. So I'm going to go to the first letter, and we do word dot character at 1 because we're at index 1 right here. Because remember, Java starts counting at 0. And now we're going to check, is the letter E a vowel? And because E is part of the A, E, I, O, U like letters, it's a vowel. Now I'm going to go through index 2. Is L a, like we're going to go to word dot character at 2. And that's going to give us L. And now we're going to check, is L a vowel? L is not part of those 5 letters. So I'm going to go to the next letter. L, it's the same thing. And it's not a vowel again. So now I'm going to go to word dot character at 4. Because the letter O is a vowel, I'm going to add 1 to my count of vowels. So if that kind of makes sense, that would be like the general idea of what you're trying to do. And but as you can see, you could kind of code for every single like what you could do is you could go through every single letter, check if each letter is A, E, I, or U, and then you would like increase the amount of vowels that you found by 1. And as you can see, it's a really repetitive again, just like that temperature problem. And you can condense this down to a for loop. So yeah, and note that you can, if the word like the if statement, you can also use if statements right here. It doesn't really matter which one you use. Just note that if you use like else if, it would just be a little bit faster. So yeah, as I said earlier, these steps seem a bit repetitive where we're going through this. So this is just the 0th character of a word. And we're checking if the 0th character is an A, E, I, or U. And no, we have to do this for every single character of the word. So this is like 50 lines of code if you want to just do the word hello. And then no one wants to do that. So we could use a for loop to reduce the repetition of steps that we need to do. So let's figure out like where we want to start our for loop at and where do we want to end our for loop at. So because indexes begin at 0, we want to start at the very beginning of the word, so at the 0th index to the last index of the string. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So hello has a length of 5, but it indexes from 0 to 4. So what do you think should be this, like when should we, what should the conditions stop at for hello? Should it be I less than 5 or should it be I less than 4? Does anyone have a good idea what it should be? Yes, that is correct. It should be 5. Yes, okay, good. I'm happy that you guys are understanding it. Yeah. So it would be I less than 5. If anyone is confused, yeah, Arish, I'm gonna go over that part later. I'm just trying to explain like through an example, and then we can start adding in those things because I'm trying to not overcomplicate it. Yeah, so the reason we want to do I less than 5 is because if you remember, I would be able to go through every single index. And if anyone wants me to show going through every single index, I can, but I don't want to spend too much time here. So I hope it makes sense. I less than 4 would not work because you would not go through the letter O. Because as soon as you get to 4, like I equals 4, and that's when you would go to the 4th index. If you go to I equals 4, 4 is not less than 4, so your for loop would not work anymore, and you wouldn't be able to go through the last character. So let's bring this kind of all together. So as you notice, the reason we use the number 5 is because 5 is the length of the word. Like the word is 5 characters long. So what we could just do instead is take the length of the word. So words.length. And oh, it's my bad. And as you can see within the for loop, I would check for every single character, check if it's A, E, I, or O, or U. And if it is one of those vowel letters, then I would increase the number of vowels I have by 1. And this would be this would be like one of the possible solutions that you could do for this problem. I noticed some people worked on this problem different ways, and if you get the right answer, then it's fine. You don't have to do it the way I did it. And now we're gonna do our Kahoot review. So Kanishk will take care of that.
Yeah.
Couldn't you do it all in one? Yeah, you could do it all in one if statement using the or operator, but I did not want to do that because the reason I didn't do that was because it was a bit confusing when I had explained it. So I didn't want to confuse people further. So yeah, I just wanted to stick with basic if-else statements. So if that clarifies the homework from yesterday. So now we're going to do a Kahoot review. So this is going to be a Kahoot review of arrays. So just make sure you use the join code, and we'll give everyone a minute or two to join. This could be like a mini break while you're waiting.
I just wanted to describe the way I did one of the homeworks, the one with the cold temperatures.
Okay, sure.
So the way I did it is I used 10 booleans for each of the indexes, and for each cold day it would be true. Would that be good or is not?
So that solution works if there's going to be 10 days. But the problem is that let's say the user enters in 15 days or 20 or 2 or 8. You're going to run into errors if it's less than 10, and if it's more than 10 days that they enter, it's only going to look at the first 10 days. So that's why in cases like these, you want to use the length of the array.
So yeah, if you remember, Kanish, can I just share for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I just want to explain this to them. Yeah, so along with like what Ishan explained, like I'm assuming this is kind of what you did right here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I just didn't have the print because it automatically printed for me.
yeah, okay. So you were going through every single index of temperatures. So you notice it's a bit repetitive, and a better way to do it would be using the for loop. And this is because, can you not annotate on the thing? 1 second.
That was an accident.
Okay. And the reason that you would want to use a for loop is because like through using a for loop, you could do any length of like you can adjust which like how many indexes you go through using a for loop in the condition. So I hope that kind of clarifies what I kind of just repeated what Ishan said. I just realized, but hopefully that clarifies your issue.
It does.
Okay.
Okay, looks like we have 21 people and we have 36 people in the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, let's wait another minute.
Besides the officers and Miss Horton, so everybody should join. It's just a quick, easy, fast, fun review.
Yeah, it's like 10 questions.
I wonder who Joe is. Looks like Joe left, so we have 22 people. Okay, so could the remaining 10 of you try to join sometime soon?
I'll start it when the next person joins, and you can always join in the middle as well.
Yeah, during the game as well.
Yep.
Okay, I guess we'll get started. Nobody's joining.
Yeah. Okay. And post on the chat if you join.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's good.
This one's correct because it has the brackets on both sides of the equal sign. The others either only have it on one side or they don't have it on any side. Remember, you need the brackets on both sides. So good job, said 9 if you got that.
Yeah, guys, try not to post in the chat too much. I think it covers the screen.
Yep. To get the length of the array, you need to do the array name dot length. So this would be to get a value in the array whenever like index, at whatever index is. So yeah, this is the correct one. Ooh.
I think there's multiple correct ones for this.
Yeah. So you see the picture, we want to get the last element in this array. So one way we could do this is find out what index is the last one. So we just count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It's actually 8.
Because index, if we do int array, if we do int array at 8, we would get the last index. The other better way to do it is to get the length of the array and do -1. So this is like the preferred way.
Just
So,
explain like what array length gives you, and then why you would want to subtract 1.
Yeah. Okay. So remember, like the indexes in array, they start at 0. So if you have an array that has 5, like it has 5 values in it, the index of the last value in it would actually be 4. Because the index of each of the 5 values is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if we just do int array dot length, then we're going to an index that doesn't exist. It's one more than like what actually exists because indexes start counting at 0. So you have to do the length -1, or you can just go to the index. So how would you get William? And this is the array and what it contains. Oh, I'm glad almost all of you got it. Yeah, William is at index 1. So you do student name at 1 to get it. Nice. So this is the array. And what is student name? Yep, because index 0, 1, 2, 3. So at index 3, it's delete. Nice. So what is... Correct. You'd get an error because you're looking for index 5, and index 5 does not exist. This array only goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Index 5 does not exist, you'd get an error. Like if you were to do that array dot length and try to get the index there, then that would also give you like the same error, like trying to get something that doesn't exist. Oh, nice. Everyone got it. It's like a two-part one because you first had to figure out where William was, and then you have to put Jake into William, or into index 1. Yeah, this time there was only one correct answer. And like the previous question, you have to do the array name's length minus 1 because indexes start at 0. And someone chose for red, it's wrong because if you did the length, then that would be 1 more than the biggest index in here. And 5 and 6 are wrong because the biggest index here is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the end of this Kahoot. Let's see who's first.
Well, someone got them all right.
Nice.
A lot of people did.
Good job. So now Madhu, he'll be reviewing arrays more. So,
Hey, good job to everyone who participated. I'm gonna go over arrays, so you can just let me share.
Yep.
Oh, I need to open up my Replit. So this is gonna be like really short, just a few slides adding on to what we learned yesterday. And because like most of the people got most of the questions right, I'm not gonna review the entirety of arrays again. I'll go over some things in Replit, but just for now, just listen to the slides. So in arrays, you can use something called an initializer list. So instead of having this, instead of having to retrieve and adjust the value of each specific index in array, you can do it all in one line. So here you have int number array, and what we do is we have an equal sign, and then we have these curly brackets. So if you remember those from the if statements and the for loops, you would use curly brackets to initialize the values of the array. And what that means is when we create this number array, what's going to happen is it's going to have the values 1, 2, and 3. Usually it would have the values of 0, 0, 0 if we were to say it has a length of 3. But here we don't need to specify the length, or we don't have to have anything else. We can just say what the values of the array are, and Java will automatically create those values of the array. So we're going to go into Replit. So just open up Replit and log in. Let me stop sharing for a second. We'll give everyone a minute or two to log on to Replit. And here is my Replit link. I will post that in the chat. So I'll give everyone a minute to get onto Replit and then I'll start. What are the first two lines for again? What do you mean? I'll be going over what I just explained. So
He means
just don't.
class main and public static void main.
Oh, okay. Oh, so like what's the point of it? You want to explain that?
Yeah, so in Java, we write our code inside of classes. They encapsulate all the functions and code we're going to write. The main method is a function, just like how we have the string function contains, we have length for strings, all that sort of stuff. The main function is what's going to actually be run. So that's where you want to put all your code, your system.out.println, your variables that you want to print out, your for loops. They go inside the main function because when you click that run button and it runs the main.java file, and the main class is going to look inside the main function and run all the code inside there.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go over what I just explained. So I'm also going to go over a few things. So let's go back to the basics. Remember that we create an array by specifying the data type. So here I can have string as my data type. Remember to have the brackets, or yeah, the brackets, and then you have your variable name. So here variable name could be string array. And then we remember the equal sign and we put new and then we specify the data type again. So our data type here is string. So we would put new string and then at the end we would have our brackets. But within these brackets, we would specify how long do we want our string array. So here I can say I want my string array to be of length 3. So that is how we create an array. I'll go over 2 more examples. So let's do one for int. So you have our data type of int. The brackets, you have your name of the array, int array. And then we would put equals new int, and then we'd have how many spaces inside the array we want. So here I want two spaces in the array, so I can just put 2. And let's do one more for double. So these are the most common arrays that you'll be using. Double brackets, double array equals new double. So new data type. So this is our data type right here. This is the array, and then these brackets is what you're going to have every single time, and you're always going to use the word new. And then we have new double. We could do 4 spaces in the array, and then remember the semicolon at the end. So now that was one way to create arrays, and we could do another way of creating arrays. So using the initializer list, okay? And as you can see in the slides, the way I created it was I specified the data type. I had my brackets, the name of the array, and then I had the values inside the array. So I'll be showing that right here. So let's do, let's make an int array. So int, here, actually, let me just comment this out actually, so I can reuse the names. So make sure to comment out your code right here, these 3 lines of code. And if you're having trouble keeping up, just please let me know in the chat. I can slow down a little. So we would have our data type, we would have the brackets, and then let's specify the name of our array. So I'm going to do int array because I can't think of any of our other names. So, and I would do equals, and then I would specify what is inside that array. So I can do 1, 2, negative 20, 23, for example. And those could be the values in my array. And what I can do to test that it actually works is I can retrieve the value of the array. So what I can do right here is I could say I want to print the value at index 1. So we would do system.out.println, and then I would say int array at index 1. And what do you guys think this will print? Yeah, that is correct. It will print 2. So if we run our code, it's going to print 2 because 2 is at index 1. And as you can see, Java will print 2. And we can let's do 2 examples, one with double, one with string, and we can also do a Boolean example because you do use Boolean arrays once in a while. So we can do double, we have our brackets, double array equals, remember curly braces, and you would have your values in the array. So negative 23 negative, or I can just do 23, 0.5, and then 12. I could, and a double, you can have whole numbers too. So this is the same thing as 23.0. This is 12.0. And let's print out, how would we print out the last index? Let's go over that too. Does anyone remember what we should use to print out the last index? Yeah, it would be index 2, or wait, that's from before. To print out the last index right here, this is at index 2, but another way we can print it out, I'm going to show the first way. So out.println double array at index 2. And this will get us the last index because there are 3 total values in this array, and there are only there's 0 index, 1 index, and then the second index. So if we print this out, this will get us the last index of the array. Yep, that is true. It'd be length minus 1. So I'm going to go over that right now. So if we just print out the length of the array, so system.out.println double array, and then what I would do is I would have my brackets, and inside the brackets, I have to do something called like array name dot length. So I'm going to show that right now. I have to type in the name of the array, and then I have to type in dot length. Okay. And at the end, I'll have my semicolon. So what this will do is, don't get confused by this, okay? So look at it from the very inside first. So we have double array.length. So what does this give us? Anyone know what double array.length will give us? Yeah, it'll give us 3. Well, no. I mean, don't worry about the error right now. I know this whole line's an error, but I just want to go over it step by step. So double array.length will give us 3. Now let's do double array at index 3. What will that give us? It will not give us 12.0 or 2.0. It will give us an error because if this doing double array at 3, so double array.length is equal to 3. If you do double array at index 3, we're going to get an error because our array only has index 0, index 1, index 2. So if we run our code, we're just going to get an error, like index out of bounds. It'll be some weird kind of error. Yeah, we got an error because we went too far. Like if there was one more value here, it would have worked, or it would not have worked, because even if you have more values, it's going to always be one more than the number of indexes. So the way we can fix this is we could subtract 1 inside. So now let's work through this step by step. What is double array.length? Double array.length is like the length of the array is 3, because as you can see, there are 3 total like numbers. So, and then if we subtract 3 by 1, we'll get 2. And if we call the second index, that's going to be our last index. So it's kind of a cool way of getting the very last index without having to count every single value, because no one wants to count every single value when you can just use this really cool shortcut. So I'm going to go over a few more examples because it might seem confusing. So let's do it for Boolean. So Boolean array equals, let's put in some values, false, true, false, okay? And actually, let me add one more value, true. So if you don't want to type it in, I pasted it into the chat. So now, using what we learned, how do we print out the last index of the array without doing Boolean array of 3? Like, what's another way we can do it using the way I just taught?
You can take a look at line 15 as a hint.
That's cheating. I mean, I would prefer you not to look at line 15. I want you guys to understand the content. And if you don't understand it, I can explain it again.
It takes a little while to type in the chat.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, you would do Boolean array of dot length minus 1. Well, yeah. So, but that would look like a system.out.println, and then so actually, when you guys are typing up the code, like you don't worry about typing. Just look at my screen, and then you can paste in my code later, because I want you guys to understand this rather than type it in. And I have my Replit link, so you can reference it later on. So we want to go to Boolean array, and then we want to have our brackets indicating we want to visit a specific index, and we want to get the length of the array. So Boolean array dot length. And now let's go through the step by step. So Boolean array dot length will give us 4. And if we go to Boolean array at index 4, we're going to get an error because there is no index 4. The highest index is 3. So remember, the highest index, the way you would get it is you would get the length and then you would subtract it by 1. So if you were to do Boolean array dot length minus 1, then we would run our code and it would get us true. Yep, it got us true right here. So hopefully that kind of explains what dot length does. I'm actually going to go over a few more examples. So we have, let's see. Okay, just don't worry, you don't need to type in your code. You can copy paste my code later. I just want you to understand this. So let's go back to our example of int array. So in our example of int array, we can let's use our dot length method and let's go a bit further with it. Okay, so int array dot length, and then let's subtract it by 2 this time. So let's do it the way like I've been doing it. Let's go through it step by step. So int array dot length will give us 3 because there are 3 total spaces in the array. And so now I'm gonna have 3 minus 2. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So actually, I'll just do this in Paint because I think it'll be better with the visual. Oh shoot. Okay. Yeah, I think it'll help with the visual. So we have 1, 2, negative 23, and these are our 3 spaces of the array. So what I'm doing is I'm retrieving the length of the array. The int array dot length is equal to 3, and I'm going to subtract it by 2. Okay, and what that will give me is 1. So now I'm going to do int array of 1. So what will int array at index 1 give us? Please type in chat what you think index 1 will give us. Yeah, that's correct. It will give us 2. So does that make sense? What I kind of just did right there? Int array dot length minus 2. If anyone says it doesn't make sense, I can always explain it again. So don't worry about that. We have a lot of time today. I want to make sure we understand everything. Okay, that's great. So let's do another example. And then you can remember, here's the link to my Replit. You can paste it in my code later, and it'll be in the email too. So let's go back to Boolean array, and let's figure out, I'll give us a problem here. So Boolean array dot length minus, let's do minus 3, okay? What do you think this is gonna print out if I do Boolean array dot length minus 3? Or yeah, what is this whole thing gonna do? It makes sure just take your time here and don't need to rush through this, okay? I'll give everyone a minute to go through this. So everyone is saying true, but I don't think that's actually correct. So if you take wait, never mind, that is correct. That is correct. I messed up. Yeah. So the length of Boolean array is 4. So if we do 4 minus 3, we would get 1. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take Boolean array at index 1, because what is this part is equal to 1. Remember, 4 minus 3 equals 1. So we would take Boolean array at index 1. So if we go back to your Boolean array, we have index 0 is false, index 1 is true. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3. So because you guys said it's true, okay, I think we understood the concept here. That's how you would, that's like kind of like different ways you can use the length of the array. And remember, the formula for that is the name of the array dot length, and it'll give you the length of the array. I think I covered everything. Yeah. Okay. So Kanish, you can go over loops now. And if you want my code for Replit, hold up. I can paste it, or not paste it. You can just use my link in the chat.
Okay, so loops today, like it'll be a bit of the same as what we did yesterday, but I'll be doing like a bit more in Replit, and I'll like frequently paste what I'm doing like into the chat. So just a reminder for the structure of a for loop. Remember, we have the for and then parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we have the three parts. It's like the initialize, like the condition, like why, for how long will this for loop run, and the change. So in this one, like our initial would be that I is at 0. This loop will stop as soon as I becomes 10, and I will increase by 1 each time. So now let me just give an example in Replit. You guys don't have to code along. I'll just send the link in chat, and you guys can look at it like in a bit, and I'll give you a bit of time to look at it, like copy it and play around a bit. So let's first delete the system. Okay, so let's say we have a number, let's call it int num is equal to 0. And what we want to do is we want to add 1 to number 5 times. So like the normal way to do that would be to do num is equal to num plus 1, and then we copy paste that 5 times. But that's not very efficient to do, because like it takes a lot of space, and that's what for loops are made for. And if you don't understand how this is incrementing num by 1, what we're doing here is we're taking what num is. So we get what num is, and we say, oh, num is 0. So 0 plus 1, so this whole condition, this whole statement is 1. And then we put that 1 into num. And num is a variable, so it's like a box which you can put in data. So that's how that works. So if we want to do this 5 times in a row, what we would need to do is use a for loop. So remember, in a for loop, you first have your for, and you have your open parentheses and close parentheses. And then after, you have your open curly braces and closed curly braces. So that's like the basic structure. And inside, there's the 3 things we need to add. We need to first like put an initial condition. We need to have a condition like while this loop will run. Then we need to increment. So the initial increment, we usually say like int I is equal to 0. So I starts at 0. And then we're going to have a condition here. I'll leave that for a bit later. But each time after the loop, we're going to increase I by 1. So the same way we increase num by 1 by taking num's previous value, adding 1 to it, and then putting it back into num. Yeah, I could use I++ as well, but I want to like keep it simple. So I'm going to do I is equal to I plus 1. Okay. So after each one, we're going to increment it 1. And we want to add 1 5 times. So we want to stop this after 1 has been added 5 times. So what should this condition be? Can you guys type that into chat? What should this condition be? So we want to add 1 to num 5 times. So yeah, I'm seeing some answers. I is less than 6, I is less than 5. The correct answer is I is less than 5. And let me explain why. Because I starts out at 0. So yeah, I starts out at 0. So in the first iteration of the for loop, it'll be 0. And then it'll be 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And it will stop when I is equal to 5, because 5 is no longer less than 5. And remember, Madhu did some tracing of this, and yeah. So if we did 6, or okay, yeah, let me just show you. What we want to do is num is equal to num plus 1 5 times. So we can just move the statement inside, and if we run that, we've added num, we've incremented num by 1 5 times in a row. And it didn't print out anything because we forgot to do system.out.println. And what do we want to print? We want to print this variable num that we made up here. So if we do that now, we will get 5. So if you want this loop to run 6 times, you can just change that to 6. And now we get that num was incremented by 1 6 times.
Kanishka, in the for loop, why don't you print out what I is? That way you can see how it works.
Oh, okay, yeah. So let me print out what I is as it goes through. So I'll do system.out ln, and I'll say, so this time what I'm doing is I'm printing out the value in the variable I each time this for loop goes through. So if we do that, we can see that the first value printed out is 0, because remember we started out the initial, we started out I at 0, and after each loop I increased by 1. So that's why I went from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember, and it, okay, wait, let me comment out this last line and run this. So now we're just printing out I's value each time. So it went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we count that up, that's 6 statements. So that means this loop ran 6 times. And if you notice, we never printed out 6. And that's because as soon as I became 6, so I was 5, and then we did I is equal to I plus 1. So I is equal to 5 plus 1, which is 6. So as soon as I is 6, we then check the condition, which is this middle part. Is 6 less than 6? It's not. So we stopped the loop and broke out. So that's why it only went to 5, but it went from 0 to 5. So if you guys notice, going from 0 to 5, that might remind you of how arrays indexes work. So say we wanted to go through every number in an array, we could use this, like an array that has a length of 6, but because indexes start at 0, it would work. So here I'm just going to comment out all of this code and show you how to go, oops, and show you how to go through the code. Give me a minute. I'm doing the multi-line comment. And then, what is an error? Whatever. So remember, as Badu said, if you want to create an array, you first give the data type, then the brackets, then let's call this array nums. So this is like some numbers. And there's two ways to do it. One way we could do it's equal to new int and give however long we want it. But this time I want to put some values in. So instead of doing that, I'm going to use an initialize it list. So I'm going to use curly braces and then put in whatever numbers I want in nums. So let's say I want 1, 7, 2, 4, 7, 5, 3. So now we have array nums with these values in this order inside of it. So if we want to print out, or let's say we want to go through this array, or let's just say we want to get the last value in this array, how would you do that?
Index 5.
Yeah, you could do index 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but the better way to do it is what's in chat, which is do nums.length minus 1. Yeah. So what we want to go till nums.length minus 1. So this is the index we want to go to. So how would we transform this into a for loop? Well, let's do that. So first it would be for, and then our parentheses, and then our curly braces. Inside the for loop, we can just we can make j equal to 0 this time. And we're starting it at 0 because arrays indexes, they start at 0. So we want to print out the first one as well. That's why we're starting at 0. And then we're going to have a condition to stop here. And then we will increase j by 1 each time because we want to print everything in this array. So what should this condition be? Like, when do we want to stop this array? Or stop this for loop? Yeah. Okay, you guys are saying j less than 6, but what's like a more general way to do this? Like, what if I added a couple more numbers? What could you say so that it goes through the entire nums array? Yes, correct. Right click. J is less than nums.length. J is less than nums.length. So remember what happened when we tried to get the index at the array.length. It gave us an error. So for example, if we tried to do, if we tried to get the number at the array's length, we would get an error. So what we're doing here is that as soon as j becomes the number, the array's length, it'll stop. So j is less than nums.length works. So yeah. So to print it out, or okay, how would you get the value of nums like at j? Like how would you get the value of nums? Say like j is going up. Yeah, we would do nums at j. So to get the value of nums at index j, you would do nums at j. And yeah, like Ishan said, yeah, I was just asking how would you get the value of nums at index j? So it's nums bracket j. And like Ishan's saying, you can use any variable in the for loop. It doesn't have to be j, it doesn't have to be I, it doesn't have to be index. You can call it whatever you want. But I'm just sticking with j because it's like short and like easy to type. So that's how you would get it. So to print it, all we have to do is system.out.println nums at j. So here what we're doing is we're getting number at j, and then we're printing it out. So like remember, like start from the middle. So we're first getting j, then we're finding what number in nums is at index j, then we're printing it out. So if we run that, what we've done is we've printed out every number in nums. And even if we like take out a few numbers, this will still work because our condition is based on the length of the array rather than like one thing we set. So this is like the way you should do it. So next, what if we want to add up all of the numbers in nums? Oh, can I post the link? Sure. And remember, yeah. So if we want to add up all of the numbers in nums, then like in the homework yesterday, we had a problem. We had to find out how many days are cold. So in that problem, we had to make like a variable that was outside of the for loop. So the same way, we'll make an int called sum. We'll start it off at 0. So just like up here, we had int num is equal to 0, and each time in the for loop, we did num is equal to num plus 1. This time, we're going to do the same thing, except our variable is now sum. Our variable is now sum, and instead of adding 1 to it, what we're going to add to it is nums at j. So I'll explain this in a second. So nums is equal to nums plus nums at j. Wait, I mean, I mixed it up. Yeah. Sum is equal to sum plus nums at j. So what we're doing is we're getting the value in sum, we're getting the value of nums at j, and we're adding them and putting that new value into sum. So for this first one, sum is 0 and nums at 0 is 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1, and we put 1 into sum. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to instead print out the sum. So this sum will print out every single time the for loop runs, so we can see how the sum increases. As you can see, the sum starts out at 1 because we just added 1. Then it becomes 8 because we added 7. Then it becomes 10 because we added 2 to 8. Then it becomes 15 because we added 5 to 10, and so on until at the end we get that the sum of this entire array is 26. So now I'm going to give you guys like 2 or 3 minutes to go through this code. And here I'm posting the link again. And if you guys have any questions, ask now. So like, I'm going to stop talking for a bit and only answer any questions you have about this code.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I copied and pasted your code onto my REPL, and
Yeah.
it gives me a reached end of file while parsing error.
Yeah. Can you paste the link to your REPL in the chat?
Yeah.
You probably like forgot some curly brace or something. Yeah.
Okay, I'll paste.
Oh yeah. On line 38, you you didn't comment out that curly brace. Oh
Oh,
wait. Oh wait. Never mind. Never mind. Just add one more curly brace at the very end of your code and it should work.
a closing one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it works. Thank you.
Nice. So does anyone have like any other questions related to this? How it works? Okay, then is there anything else I should talk about, Madhu?
I think that's fine.
Yeah, should be good. Like
Yeah.
you guys should know now how to like go through an array, how to use what you get and like print it out and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's
And
fine.
yeah. And instead of this plus, if you want to do something like multiply, you could get like wait, start out sum at one. But if you do something like multiply, you can get what all of the numbers multiplied equal to. Yeah, you can do a lot of things with this. So yeah,
Okay.
the link to my code is in the chat and I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, and the next topic we're going to cover is something you all are probably looking forward to, and that's how to get user input. So I'll go ahead and start sharing. And this is really important, and it's very fun, and it's really applicable. So you want to make sure everybody's paying attention. Okay, so let's get started. In order to get user input in Java, we use something called scanner. But before we discuss what scanner is, let's talk about what a library is, because scanner comes from a library. So a library is a collection of code that someone else has already written and that we can use in our programs. So remember yesterday we were working with string, the string class. That's something other people have written. We were using functions like equals, length, contains, replace, other things like that. And just like how we have that library for string, we also have one for scanner. And the way we would include scanner in our code is by saying um, import java.util.scanner. And that basically says you're going to be using scanner in your program. So now you can use whatever functions you want with scanner. And what scanner does is allow you to retrieve input from the user. So that's what scanner does. And to give you some more examples of why we need libraries, imagine you have a pencil and you want to write something on a piece of paper. And now imagine that every time you wanted to use a pencil, you had to go out, get a block of wood, a piece of lead, and make your own pencil. That's really time consuming. You're basically reinventing the wheel. You have to do the whole process from scratch. But instead, because of libraries, we can just import them in Java. And this is code that somebody else has written so that we don't need to keep on rewriting it. And this is how we can use it. And in regards to how we use scanners, before we do that, let's just take a quick review of how we create a regular data type in Java. So we'd have the data type, variable name equals value, like int age equals 11, double average equals 97.5, whatever. But because scanner is a class, to create a variable from a class, we use the word new followed by the name of that class, and parentheses. So you can see we have scanner, which is the class name. We have input, which is the variable name. We have the word new. Then we have scanner again, which is the class name. And inside for scanner, we're going to put system.in. And this basically tells the program how you're going to get the input from the user. So this is how we create a scanner variable. And here are some of the methods. The slides are pretty short for scanner because a lot of it's going to be hands-on. But you can see if our scanner variable is called input, over here we have this input variable. To do some stuff with it, we can say input.nextInt. This will get us the next integer entered by the user. If we say input.next, this will get us the next word. And remember, words are strings. If we say input.next line, this will get us the whole line. So maybe it'll give us multiple words instead of just one. And there's a bunch of other methods like next long, next double, next float, next short, next boolean, next whatever data type we have in Java. So that's all. That's the end of the slides. Let's go over to REPL.it and we'll be coding this together. So here's REPL.it. I'm going to create a new REPL. It's going to be in Java and it will be called scanner. And I'll create the REPL. I'll also post the link so you guys can follow along. But I'll also be going slow so you can type everything. Where's the chat? Okay, so we have our REPL over here. And just like we saw from the slides, to create our scanner variable, we're going to type in scanner, which is the name of our class, input, because that's what we're going to be using it for, to get input. So when you're creating variables, you want to make sure that you have descriptive names. Then we're going to say new, just like we did with arrays, scanner again, parentheses, inside we're going to type system.in, and then a semicolon at the end. So this is how we create our scanner variable. And going back to a question that somebody had asked earlier about what these first two lines do, I also want to mention that these curly braces at the end line up with the main function and the class. So you can see here there's a curly brace after public static void main. This curly brace, this open curly brace lines up with this closing curly brace. And this open curly brace from class main lines up with this one. So whenever you're writing code in your main function, you want to make sure that you have these two things above it and you have two curly braces underneath. And now we have to import our scanner because if we run this, we're going to get an error. Because right now, our Java compiler, we have not included the scanner library, so it does not know what the scanner is. And you can see here, it says, cannot find symbol scanner input. And then it says here, symbol class scanner. So we'll say import java.util.scanner. And if this looks familiar, it's because for arrays yesterday, Madhu and you guys had to import java.util.arrays. So now we run this, we won't get any issues. Everything will be fine. Okay. Yeah, that took a while to run, but it's finally done. And now we'll go ahead and get an integer from the user. So we'll say int, we can just say for now number, int number equals input, which is our scanner variable, dot next int. And you can see if we, before I hit enter, actually, we can go ahead and scroll through and see some of the functions that that scanner has. We have next int, we have next byte, next long, next short, next line. We'll be going through these ones over here. But the first one we'll do is next int. So click on that and then press semicolon because we have to end our statements with semicolons. And we have this over here. So if we run this, it will give us the opportunity to enter a number. So it's still running, it's really slow. And you can see here, it's not showing like this orange symbol again over here because it's expecting us to type something. So I'm just going to type in 100, press enter, and now you can see it's done running, that this triangle thing up here. So that's how we get user input. And to actually verify that it works, after we get this number from the user, we'll say system.out.println your number is, And remember, this is a string, so we want to put in quotations, your number is, followed by a plus sign, and then number. And this goes back to what we covered yesterday. Remember how we can add variables like numbers and decimals onto the end of a string? We just have to use a plus sign. I'll copy and paste this into the chat. So now if we run this, it will display your number is and whatever we entered. For this example, I'll go ahead and enter 90. I'll just enter 100. So I type in 100 here. I press enter and it says your number is 100. And that's a really quick overview of how you get numbers from users. Has everybody gotten to this step so far? Yeah, that is cool. And you can use this for all sorts of things. You can make guessing games. You can make a program to calculate the average of your grade. You can do pretty much everything with Scanner to get user input. So we'll take a yeah, you can make a very basic guessing game. That was originally on the schedule, but due to time constraints, we'll not cover it. So now the next method we're going to cover is input.next. We go back over to our slides really quickly. We can see input.next gives us a word. So I'm going to say, I'll comment this out over here and I will type string sentence. Yes, that's a good question, Smith. So there's a class, just like we have classes for scanner, we have classes for string. There's a class in Java called random, and you can use that for random numbers. And it's not too difficult. If you search it up, you can click on the first link. It'll take maybe a minute to learn. Okay, so now we'll say string sentence equals input dot next. And then after that, we'll say system.out.println your word is followed by sentence. Well, actually, input.next gives us a word. So we'll just say string word equals input.next. And we'll say your word is word. So here that is. And if we run this, you'll see it'll give us the word. So for this word, I'll enter hello once it's done running. So I'll type in hello, press enter, and it says your word is hello. And that's how you get a string. You use hello. I mean, you use the next function. Let's see what happens when I type hello world with a space in between. So that's two words in the sentence. So I type hello, I type world. You can see it just said your word is hello. So if we want to get a sentence, I'm going to comment this out so you guys can come back to it later. To get a sentence, we'll say string sentence equals input.next line. And this will give us the whole line. But let me go back a bit. You can see that REPL is telling me next line gives me a string. See over here, string. So I'll click on that. And then I'll say system. I'll just copy and paste it from line 11. I'll copy paste that there. And I'll say your sentence is, and then sentence. So now if we run this, it's running here. And now let's say something like hello world with an exclamation mark. What's up? And when I press enter, it prints out your sentence is hello world, what's up? Technically that's two sentences, but that's fine. So that's what input.next line does. It gives us the whole line that the user has entered. And the remaining examples are very similar. If you want to get a double, for example, like let's say you want somebody to enter a decimal, you should say, yeah, we could say sentences over here. So like put a parentheses as. So let's say we wanted to get a decimal number, we could say double decimal number equals input.next double. And this will get a double from the user. And we'll store it inside this variable and so on. And I think you guys get the idea. Now we're going to do something where we read in an array. So we'll ask the user for the number of points they got in a game they were playing, and then we'll tell them the total number of points that they got. We'll add it up together. Okay, so I'm going to move all of this code down to the bottom. And what is the first thing? Let's try to make this nice and user-friendly. So what is the first thing we should ask the user? I think we should ask them how many games they played, right? So we'll ask them, we'll say system.out.println, how many games did you play? and we'll ask them that. So if we run this, it will just display how many games did you play. But to actually get their input, just as we did over here on lines 11 and 12, we will say int number of games equals input.next int. So we can run this now, and it will allow us to enter how many games we played. So it says here, how many games did you play? I'll just say I played 3 games. So I type in 3, hit enter, and you can see it's done running. Now we will have, how should we keep track of their total score? Remember how in the example before, Kanishk added up the numbers in the array? What did he use to keep track of that sum though? You guys can type into the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any responses. We should use a variable to keep track of the score. And hopefully that makes sense. We'll have an int variable called score. So we'll say int total score. We'll just call it score. Int score, that starts off at 0. Okay, so we have int score equals 0. And what variable tells us how many games the user has played?
Number of games.
Yep, that's correct. Number of games. So like in this example, the computer asked us how many games did you play, and I typed in 3. Now that number of games stores that 3. It contains how many games you want to play. So we should probably use a loop. That way we can repeat the same thing multiple times and ask the user for their score, and then add it to our score variable. So we'll have a for loop, and then this is what it looks like. I'll start with a variable called I equals 0, and I will increase by 1. What is our condition? How many times do we want to loop? We want to loop 3 times. Yep. If I said I played 10 games, how many times would we want to loop?
10.
Yeah, because the user has to give us 10 games. They have to give us the scores for 10 games. What if I said I played number of games? How many times should we loop?
The variable.
Yeah, exactly. So for our condition, we're going to say I is less than number of games, because number of games stores the number of games that the user played. And that's how many times we want to loop. We want to go from 0 all the way up right before number of games. So for example, if the user said they played 3 games, I will be, I will be 0, then it will be 1, then it will be 2, and it'll stop because 3 is not less than 3. So it will loop 3 times, and we can each time we can ask the user for their game, for their score. So I hope that makes sense. It's just a basic for loop. And over here, we'll say system.out.println, enter your score. And personally, I don't like how it said how many games did you play, and then the user had to enter it on a different line. I would prefer if the user could type their 3 on the same line as the question. So what can we do to fix that error? And once again, to restate it, over here it's saying, yep, that's correct, Neil. What println does is it prints a new line afterwards. So that's why over here it says how many games did you play, then it goes to the next line and we type in 3. If we want to say how many games did you play and then the user enters it right next to it, we should delete the ln. So over here we'll delete this ln and ask the user to enter their score. So let's just run this to see where we're at. And for the number of games, I'll say I played 5 games. And you can see it printed out enter your score 5 times. So it said enter your score 5 times. And now I need to actually take in the user's input for what score they got. So how should I do that? How do I get an integer from the user? Remember, our scanner variable is called input. So how would I use the input variable to get the integer from the user? Input.nextInt. Yep, that's correct. The nextInt function gives us the next integer that the user has entered. And I'll just store that in a variable because we want to take that and store it in a variable. So just say int uh, temporary score. Actually, I'm not going to do that. If you remember from Kanishk's repo, I don't have it open, but you remember how he said the sum equals sum plus array of j? He basically took whatever array of j is and added it onto sum and put that inside sum. So we're going to do something similar. If we do input.nextInt, and guys, I'm trying to go slow so you can also type along. I'll just copy and paste this into the chat in case anybody needs it. So input.nextInt will give us the next integer that the user has entered, so which is basically their score. What do we want to do with this score that they have entered? We want to count their total score. We want to add up all their scores together to get the total. And our total variable is this over here. So what should we do with score and input.nextInt? In order to calculate their total score, we want to add all the inputs together. Add input to the score. Yep, that is correct. So we'll say score equals score plus input.nextInt. And all this will do, so let's just go over what this does in the for loop. It will print out enter your score. The user types in their score and input.nextInt right over here will give us their score. So if the computer asked enter your score and I typed in 10, input.nextInt will give us 10. Then we take that 10, add it to our score so far, and take that whole thing, put it back in score. And that's how we get the sum of their scores. So let's run our code so far to see where our little program is at. I'm going to say that I played 3 games. And here you can see it says enter your score. I'm going to say I got 100 on the first game. Okay. Now it says enter your score again. Let's say I got 20 on the second game. I didn't do as well. And then let's say on the third game, I did absolutely amazing. I got 1,000. So I press enter, and you can see we didn't get any errors. So what's the last thing that we have to do? Now that we have our score variable, we've added up all the scores. What's the last thing we have to do to tell the user? Yes, we have to print it out. So we'll say system.out.println. Your score is : and then score. And now if we run this, yeah, so if you're getting an error, just post your link into the chat and one of the officers will take a look. But now I'll print how many games did you play. I'll say I played 5 games this time. For my first score, I got 10. For the second one, I got 20. For the third one, I got 100. For the fourth one, I got 50. And then for the fifth game, I got, let's say, 60. And now if I hit enter like magic, it says your score is 240. So let's just make sure that's correct. 10 plus 20 is 30, 130, 180, 240. And here, this is a little cool program where the user can enter how many games they played and the program will calculate their total score. The last thing we're going to do for fun is ask the user for their name so that we can print out Bob's score is 240 or whatever the name is. Yes, you want to make sure on line 1 you have import java.util.scanner because like I showed, if you don't have this line of code, it doesn't know what scanner is and it's going to say it cannot identify this certain symbol. So you want to make sure you have scanner. Cannot find symbol scanner. Okay, so we'll ask the user for their name before we ask how many games they played. So underneath scanner input, we'll say system.out.println. We'll actually just say print, enter your name. So let's just run this and we'll see what happens. And while it's running, I have a question for you guys. How do we get a string from the user? So remember, input.nextInt gives us an int. How do we get a string? Whoops. Here, take a look at the slides for help. Input.nextLine. Input.nextLine or input.next. Now I have a question for you. If we want to get the user's name, should we use input.next or input.nextLine? What do you think we should use?
Next.
I think we should use next line, because if they enter their first and second name, then next will only give you their first name. If you use next line, it will give you the whole thing that they entered on that line. So they could enter their first, middle, and last name, and it will get all of that. They could also enter a nickname or Mr. or Miss or something like that, and it would get all of that in. So that's why over here, I'm going to say string name equals input dot next line. And this gives us the whole line that the user enters. And now we will take this name variable, and instead of saying your scores, over here we'll say system.out.println name plus apostrophe s. And this will make sense once we run it. And this is our final program. So let's take a look at how it works. So first, it'll print out enter your name. I'll enter my name, Ishan. I'll enter in IJApps. I'll press enter. So that's what the name variable is. And then it asks us, how many games did you play? I'll say I played 5 games. Now it says enter your score. I will type in 10. Then I'll type in 50, 20, 20, 30, and then I'll say 1,000. And if I press enter, it says IJApp score is 1,110. So that's pretty cool. And you could put your name here instead of IJApps. You could put like Ishan or whatever your name is for the input. And it'll print out your name and then the score that you got. So are there any questions about this or how it works, how we can use Scanner?
Why do you put the apostrophe S?
I put the apostrophe S so that it doesn't print IJApp score, because that's incorrect grammar. Like you wouldn't say Ishan score is, you would say Ishan's with a apostrophe S.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little thing like that. And that's why it says your name plus apostrophe S, because in the end, it's going to take all of these and put them together. So right here, you can see name was IJApps, but then it says IJApps apostrophe S, and that's what we put in the quotes over here. Okay, so some people are still working on getting their code to work, so we'll wait a bit. And if you have any questions, you can unmute your mic or just type them into the chat. Yeah, here's the pretty much the whole code for this little program. So you can stop. Just a second, someone's private messaging me. Yeah, Scanner is really cool. And it's also really important because it's used a lot for programming competitions. This is something we're going to talk about in about 2 minutes, but Scanner is used a lot for programming competitions. And while we're waiting for people to get their code fixed, I will tell you a little story. So one time in biology, our teacher had to go to a conference. So we had a substitute. And biology was a double block. So we're given this thick packet we had to do for busy work, basically. And there is a website where there are a bunch of letters. So if you're familiar with DNA, it has 4 nucleotides. They're just letters, T, A, C, and G. And for our assignment, we had to go to this website, and there are hundreds of lines of T's, A's, C's, and G's. And we had to count how many T's there were in like 100-line block. So while people were busy counting how many T's there actually were, I just used Scanner. I used a for loop, I used an if statement, and I just printed out how many T's there were. And it took about a minute to do. And I got it with 100% accuracy. Everybody else was getting different answers. It was taking them a while to count it. I was just able to use Scanner to get the user input, copy paste it into my program, and get the answer. So this is why Java is really useful. Scanner is cool. So you can find a lot of applications for it. And that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So this pretty much concludes the coding and content session, content part of our Java winter camp. If you do Control F, it was a specific 100 line block. Like the whole page had thousands of lines, but there was a specific part in red. So Control F wouldn't have worked. But yeah, are there any questions at all about content, for loops, arrays, Scanner? Because if not, we'll go ahead and talk about how you can continue to learn Java after this course. And actually, we'll give you some time to have a short break. If you want to come back by 2:55, this will conclude our course. So you can just take a short break now. And we'll help people who are running into errors. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly go to the REPL code because it seems that, so when you're importing a class in Java, you have to use the import keyword first, import, and then java.util.scanner and then semicolon. Instead of putting my code into the chat, I'll just put the link again because that way it's easier to copy and paste. If I put it into chat, it gets really weird and it's a little difficult to copy and paste. So there's the class again. Yep.
Would there be a way to like let somebody like put input like multiple, like after they inputted this, like they could do it again without like redoing the program?
Yeah, that would be, you would use a while loop for that. We covered while loops really briefly yesterday. I can do a really quick example. You guys can try to keep up, but I'll be sharing the link anyways with you, so you can just watch for now. I'll just quickly demo that because that's a really good question, and that's why while loops are really important. They're used for all sorts of stuff like user validation, those kind of things. So we will say, we'll have a Boolean for whether we should keep looping. So we'll say keep looping equals true. And we'll say while keep looping, this loop is going to keep on repeating. And over here, we'll say system.out.println. Do you want to continue the program? And to make it nice, I will just say system.out.print. That way everything's on one line. And then I'll just say yes or no. Okay, so this will ask the user, do you want to continue the program? And they will either type yes or no, which means it's going to be a string input. So I'll say string response equals input dot next. And this is just a one word response, so next works fine. And now this is where I'm going to use an if statement and the equals method that we covered with strings yesterday and the day before. So we'll say if response dot equals yes, then that means they said yes. So we'll say keep looping equals true. Else if, others will just say else keep looping equals false. And then outside the loop, we can say system.out.println finished the program. I'll just run this so we can see what happens. And I'll explain what it does once more. So it takes a while to run. Do you want to continue the program? I'll type in yes. Do you want to continue the program? Yes, 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 yes. And you can see it'll keep on asking us. The second I type no and hit enter, it says finish the program. And you'd use a while loop for a guessing game, because just like how we did in this example over here in a guessing game, you want to keep asking the user for a number until they get it correct. So this is why while loops are important. And this is just a brief example of how you would repeatedly ask the user if they want to continue the program or not.
Yeah, so then like then you would just like put the code in for the program again after the thing if they choose yes.
Yeah, so if they choose yes, then like this is where you write whatever you want.
Oh.
Well, you'd write your code to do whatever here. Like if you wanted to ask them, if you wanted them to enter in their scores multiple times, you would just take this code and put it here. So that way, once you're done asking them for their scores, then you ask them, do you want to continue the program after you've already done the stuff? And then if they say yes, it will come back and it'll keep on repeating. Otherwise, if you say no, it will exit. But the main thing over here is that We just have a Boolean for whether we should keep looping. And based on what they say, we set it to true or false. And we don't even really need this keep looping equals true, because it already is true. I just did it so that's easier to understand. That was a really good question. Are there any other questions like that? Because this is the last day you have with us. If you have any questions you want us to cover, we can go
Yeah,
over it.
like I have one more, like could you like code, like they can edit their program even after like they clicked enter?
No, so with Scanner, once it reads in a line, it does not go back. You cannot do
Okay.
that with Scanner. Okay, so that's the end of the break then. If there are any other questions, you can ask it now. But now we'll discuss how you can continue learning Java after this course. So how to continue to learn. Practice writing programs with the knowledge you already have. And you can see here, make a guessing game is actually right over here. You can have classes in classes. That's a bit advanced. And it's actually one of the things on the next slide we'll talk about how you can learn. But coming back here, practice writing programs with the knowledge you already have. So you guys know for loops, you know arrays, you know variables and data types, string functions. You know the basics of while loops. And you also learn how to get user input. So try to make a program where users enter in the grades that they got and you print out their average grade. And you can see how this is an applicable program that you can actually use, where you ask users for grades and give them their average. And like the letter grade assignment, you could actually take their average now and then say you have an average of A plus in computer science and you have an A minus in this class and so on. And once you're comfortable with the coding skills you have, you can follow tutorials on YouTube to learn more. So a lot of great YouTube channels. If you search up stuff, you'll probably find a YouTube video to explain it, because that's the really great thing about YouTube. And here are some topics to learn. You can write these down. We'll also be sharing the slides with you. So you can come back to them later. But probably after this class, one thing you want to learn is the math class. So just how we had strings and arrays, we have the math class for doing math. If you want to take 2 to the power of 5, use the math.pow function. You want to find the square root, use math.square root, and so on. And yes, there are specific libraries for FTC. I can show you what that code looks like after this slide, after this presentation. Some other things you may want to learn: 2D arrays, double for loops, object-oriented programming. So this goes to that question for the person who asked, what happens if you code a class into a class? That has to deal with object-oriented programming. This is what distinguishes Java from JavaScript, which is what somebody had asked 2 days ago. So this is something to look into in the future, later on, once you're comfortable with Java, because this is a little more advanced. But there's like a 30-minute video on this by a YouTube channel called Free Code Camp. They explain it pretty well. I'm not sure if they actually go into how to code it, but they explained the content really well. So that's something you could look into later on. And more things in Java, like the collections interface. So just how we imported scanner, we imported arrays when we're doing some array methods. There's something called the collections interface with array lists, sets, maps, all these other types of storing, all these other ways of storing data. So that's something you can look into to learn later on. As for places to code, believe it or not, REPL is actually not the best place to code. You can see it takes a while to run the code. It's pretty slow. There's not that many features and all that kind of stuff. And it's online. So
Why do
for
we
actual
use REPL?
software that you can, what?
And why do we use REPL?
We use REPL because it's online, it's free, and it's quick.
Yeah, if we tried to like get everyone to install an IDE, then that would take way too long because there's like many different bugs you can get. So REPL is just easy for everyone.
Yeah, REPL works if you want to code online, and the examples we were doing were pretty basic. But if you're making an app or something, or making a really large Java program, you may want something more powerful with debugging features and other things. So these are my personal preferences in order that I like them. So IntelliJ IDEA by JetBrains is really good. Really nice auto suggestion. It looks nice. It has a lot of features. Visual Studio Code looks really beautiful. It's one of my favorite code editors. And there's lots of extensions you can get to do all sorts of stuff, to change the color. It looks really nice. It's a nice place to code. Eclipse, I don't like it too much. I used to use it, but it looks, even though they update it, it just looks like it's really old still. So I personally don't like it that much. And the color theme isn't that great either. Then there's Sublime Text and JCreator. So you probably want to look into installing IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code if you're serious about Java and want to continue programming locally on your actual machine so you can install. Yes, you can code in terminal. I like to code there as well, but I didn't put it on the slide.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could Java be also used for making games on like Minecraft, like say an FPN, first person shooter or something like that?
Was your question whether it can be used for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm not too experienced in using Java for games, but I know it is used for some games.
Okay.
It actually brings us into our next topic, the applications of Java. So robotics, I think like, whoops, what happened? Okay, I think half of you are from, I know like at least 30 of you are from Rice Middle School, and you guys are
Yeah.
doing robotics. So Java is one of the language that's used for competitions like FLL, FTC, FRC, and they specifically use a software called Android Studio in high school. In middle school, you may use a different software, but this is one place where Java is used regardless. Well, yes, there are jobs where you code in Java, so you could make a living using Java. Yeah. Okay, the next application of Java is programming competitions. This is actually one of the main things that we do over here in Computer Science Club, in PESH Computer Science Club. Um, your high schools also have computer science clubs, all the senior highs. And I think Jasper is currently the only junior high that has another computer science club. So we compete in competitions like we compete in competitions. They're really fun. Some good websites to practice are Code Forces, HackerRank, Usako, Caddis. The list just goes on. HackerRank is probably the best, and I'll be showing you how to use HackerRank and what you can do with HackerRank. That's a great place to continue to learn Java after this camp. But here's just a picture of me 2 years ago. This is at UTD's Battle of the Brains competition, and you can see these are all high schoolers. We compete in these kind of competitions. They're really fun. Um, Computer science competitions are also pretty big in college. There's a lot of college competitions by Google, Facebook. This one over here is ACM ICPC. It's an international competition. And the UTD college team, they actually qualified for the international contest this past year for 2019, 2020. So that's really cool. And then there's competitions like USACO, which are a little more advanced, but they're for high school, middle school, and elementary school students. Next, applications of Java games like Minecraft. If you've ever installed Minecraft, I think it says there's like a Java edition. So that's how I know that Minecraft uses Java. Then Android apps. So you see here, this is the Android Studio icon. If you guys are, Java is actually used for creating Android apps. You do have to know a little bit of object-oriented programming beforehand, but it's pretty basic. And I have a YouTube channel for teaching that. So if you're interested, you can ask later. But that's how Java can be used for games and Android apps. And the main thing is you can use it anywhere pretty much. Like I told you that little story about how I used it in biology. I've also used it in statistics and other classes. Used it for science fair. You can make apps, you can make games. It's used for robotics. So pretty much anything you could think of, if you want to write a program for it, you can most likely do it in Java. And I hope you guys enjoyed this Java Winter Coding Camp by Plano East Computer Science Club. We're happy to teach you. We hope you have fun and we hope you enjoy the rest of your break. So thank you for attending.